Well, hey, good morning to all of you, and thank you, Sharks. Thank you, Venture Partners. And I also want to say thank you to these people right here on the screen. Hopefully this will work. Todd Wilson and also Dave Ferguson. Come on, this is gonna work here. Great way to launch us. There we go. No, the reveal went too fast. But what will the future bring? And everybody's been talking about the future. They've had a real hope-filled future for what everything's going to look like. I can't match Armand's energy at all, but the future actually, through the technology that I just showed you, gives us this. And Todd, I don't know where you're at in the room, but the beard looks nice. Dave, 20 years from now, that's kind of what that will all look like. And I was going to plug you guys into that, but I didn't know who the Sharks would be. So we'll take that off the screen because, yeah. The future of the church, there's some things that age well, there's some things that don't. We can joke about the fact that 20 years from now, all of us are going to look different. 50 years from now, some of us won't be here. And I've been thinking about that, this idea of the one person standing up in front of a crowd, superhero, celebrity, pastor approach is a concept that hasn't aged very well, in my opinion, either. And my story is a case in point. Maybe you've heard the joke, I'll bring it back, of the husband and wife getting ready for church one Sunday. The wife came in and talked to her husband and said, honey, it's time to go to church today. And he said, well, I don't want to go. And she said, why don't you ever want to go to church? He said, I'll give you two good reasons why. Number one, I don't like any of the people in this church. Number two, none of those people like me. And she said, well, let me give you two reasons why you should go to church. Number one, you're 39 years old. And number two, you're the pastor, right? We've heard that before maybe, but that 39-year-old pastor was actually me. And we had planted churches. We started a church in Dallas, Texas, and Des Moines, Iowa. I was in my second decade of church planting. It was all about outreach and gathering and, developing staff and drawing in people. And I woke up one Sunday morning, 2015, I'll never forget it. I told my wife after a year from hell and burnout and everything else, I just said, I'm not going to go to church today. We were about an hour before service started. And I literally called my associate pastor and I said, put in the emergency Andy Stanley DVD today because I'm not going to make it. And that started the beginning of a mandatory 3-month sabbatical where I had to assess myself and why I found myself in the place I did. And it wasn't a pretty story. And I had to do some deconstruction. And I had to think about my own life and ministry and everything. And I was walking, I flew out to California to visit my sister, walking on the beach, and God spoke to me so clearly. I was obsessing over church growth and church planting. And God said to me, son, the Great Commission is not about growing churches. The Great Commission is not about planting churches. The Great Commission is to go and make disciples. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. I literally repented and realized everything I had been doing in gathering was fine, but I wasn't discipling. I was just connecting. So for the next few years, I really poured myself into disciple making. I went after it, mobilizing disciple makers, mobilizing the body of Christ. And then in 2019, we launched this ministry called Groundswell. And Groundswell exists primarily to train pastors and leaders in how to mobilize disciple makers and a group of people I want to talk to you about today, and pioneer leaders. So I believe that there are pastors all over the country with that same paradigm of gathering and growing and maybe even planting, but not necessarily disciple making. And so we come alongside pastors in the first year. We've trained 500 pastors through disciple-making practices and principles, 350 of them online through online cohorts, and then another 150 through on-site stuff. So this whole idea of mobilization, if you want to know kind of philosophically what this looks like, basically what we try to do is we try to help lost people come to Christ, and those friends become disciples. Those disciples become disciple makers become pioneer leaders, become church planners, become network leaders, or sending pastors. That would be ideal. And we really focus in on the green section, which is the disciple makers and the pioneer leaders. Because we believe that green section is the core of what really needs to happen in more churches. To take the people they already have and to train them in how to make disciples, number one, and then to see those disciple makers that emerge to become potential pioneers. Pioneer leaders, I believe, are the key piece between those making disciples and those planting churches. And so let me just share a few stories of some pioneers. One guy by the name of Blaine, he's a pioneer. He was a soldier in Afghanistan, serving over there. He was injured in the war. The people he was basically serving betrayed him, the Afghan people, through a number of circumstances. He grew to hate the Afghani people. He moved back to Texas, found himself in an apartment complex surrounded by, guess who? Afghan refugees all around. And God did some work on his heart, and he decided to pioneer a Discovery Bible study, which led to 2 and 3, and incredible things happened through Blaine, this former soldier. God really healed him. I think about Laura. Laura was sexually abused as a child all the way through high school, has a radical testimony. God took her and that testimony, and now she's pioneering a new work called Jericho Ministries. It's reaching in the heart of the city, women trapped in the adult entertainment industry, and she's discipling them, and it's incredible. Or Paige. Paige, 20-something, race fan. I'm from Indianapolis. She grew up in Speedway. She loves NASCAR. She loves Formula One, all that. Didn't feel like she had a place to fit in the church and the structures of the church, children's ministry, greeting, helping out, whatever it might be. And God helped her find a ministry. It's an evangelistic racing ministry. And I could go on. There's hundreds of stories I could share of people. It's the rancher that converted his property outside of Detroit to become a therapy center with horseback riding for PTSD survivors. It's the couple that's starting an art cafe in an innovative way to reach artists. It's my 5th grade daughter, seriously, who decided to pioneer a new Bible study in her community to bring the other 5th graders together through some innovative backyard Bible club stuff. So the idea of pioneering is one we want to go after. And the beginning of this journey on really zeroing in on pioneers started with a project we connected with the Wesleyan Church on called Project 72. It's based on Luke chapter 10. And basically what we wanted to do is start an R&D project to learn more about pioneers and who they are. So through Ed Love, the Wesleyan Church, Groundswell, recruited 72 pioneers and did a lot of research and development, just try to figure out what makes them tick and how can we help these pioneers move faster. And through that, we found some fascinating things. So everybody went through the APEST assessment, had our ideas on what might be number one, and by far it was evangelism. That was number one for these 72 pioneers. Shepherd teacher, close behind. Apostleship was actually number 4. We went through Myers-Briggs profile just to see, are there any personalities that are similar? A lot more research has to be done, but we found that 65% were diplomats, which is the NF in the middle. So they're enthusiastic, they're diplomatic, they're empathetic. That was interesting. Those that had pastors that were very or extremely supportive, their net promoter score went up 50%, which just means they're passionate when pastors are passionate and pouring into them, more enthusiastic. And then finally, 80% of the pioneers in Project 72 said that their pastors have no sort of training or development around what they do, and they wanted continuous training. So 80% said, we want more training, and it's not there. We don't know what to do. That's when the Pioneer Training Center concept was born. And this training center idea, I'll just lay it out and then we can get into some questions, but basically will unfold with 3 phases. So it's not in existence yet. Project 72 was kind of like a beta test, I think, for us. Phase 1 is going to be finishing up research and development on the curriculum and the process itself. I'm wrapping up my DMin at Asbury, and the title is Characteristics of Effective Pioneers. So we want to learn from that research and provide some kind of an assessment for pastors to be able to identify and train and mobilize their pioneers through that. So that's phase one. That wraps up this summer. Phase two will be October through December. This phase is when we connect in with 50 to 100 pastors around the country for a 6-session Building a Pioneer Pipeline cohort. And those cohorts are going to run regionally, and the fruit of that will be phase three, which will actually be launching then the Pioneer Training Center with these pioneers across the country. That training center will be a year at a time. And Hal is just such a great guy. His shadow is looming over me. I'll share more in a second, but that's really the guts of the project.